Hi, my name is Nimish Gautam, and I'm an American-Swedish dual citizen. I've been living in Sweden for a few years now, and I realized that many foreigners don't understand how the Swedish government works. So I decided to make a few explainer videos to take people through the basics. This is the first video, giving a super simple overview of the government. Here we go. Sweden is a representative democracy, so the people are the source of the government's authority. Sweden is also a rule of law country, so all people and government institutions are subject to the law equally. In Sweden's case, the highest law on the land is called the Constitution. Well, okay, it's not really a law so much as 4.5 laws that are bundled together. Yeah, 4.5. The first law is called the Instrument of Government, and this one's pretty much a traditional constitution. I recommend taking a look because it lists out a lot of fundamental freedoms that you have in this country, along with the basic rules that set up how the government and parliament work. Next is the Freedom of Press Act, which outlines protection of the press and general flow of information. It's been updated for the digital age, so if you run a blog or website, you can fill out some forms, and if you meet a few criteria, you can get constitutional protection for your random homepage. Next is the Fundamental Law on Freedom of Expression, which expands some of the freedoms from the Freedom of Press Act. It's a pretty comprehensive act and good to know in case you accidentally get into internet debates about what does and doesn't count as freedom of speech in Sweden. Then we have the Succession Act, which determines who will become king or queen next. Kind of interesting for historical reasons, but actually applies to a shockingly small number of people in Sweden. Finally, we have the Riksdag Act, which governs some of the more fine-grained details of how the parliament functions. To make things easier, we're going to refer to these collectively as the Constitution, the way most literature does. So the people can't change the Constitution or create laws directly, so they elect a group of representatives called Riksdagen, who make the laws at the national level and do have the ability to change the Constitution. In order to vote for Riksdagen, you have to be a Swedish citizen over the age of 18 and have been registered in the population register at some point in your life. Another important function Riksdagen has is to elect the Prime Minister out of Riksdagen members. The Prime Minister, along with several other members, gain new functions as head of government for different government departments. The Prime Minister, along with these heads of government, are collectively called regeringen, or just the government. So, even though these two groups come from the same general election pool, they're treated as completely separate governing bodies in the law and in the media. I don't think that's a totally fair view because even after the government is formed, there's still quite a few formal and informal channels of cooperation and coordination between Riksdag and the government. The way the government is formed is an interesting topic on its own and may be the topic of a future video. For now, though, it's enough to say that this whole layer makes up the national level of government. Sweden can also be divided up into 21 smaller areas called län. This is usually translated as county, though the areas function a little bit more like states, districts, or provinces in most other countries. And even though they're translated as county, the governing structures are usually translated as regions. So I'm just going to stick with that terminology here. Each region has its own regional government. Some parts of the infrastructure, like healthcare and some public transport, fall under regional jurisdiction. Regional governments consist of a regional council who makes regulations, and the administrative board who execute on them. The administrative board is appointed by the national government, and the regional council is directly elected by the people. The rules for voting for this group is a little bit different. You just have to be registered in Sweden for 3 years leading up to the election, and then you have the right to vote, even if you're not a Swedish citizen. So we can also break Sweden down into 290 municipalities, each with their own municipal government. You can probably guess what's coming here. The municipal government has a municipal council, which handles local legislation, and an executive board that handles execution. The municipal council appoints the executive board, and the municipal council itself is directly elected by the population. The rules for voting here are the same as they are for the regional layer. Okay, and now for the last layer. Sweden is also a member of the EU. When joining the EU, member nations agree to follow the decisions made by the EU on certain topics like trade and freedom of movement. I won't go into the details about the EU's processes in this video, but basically, the EU legislative system has 3 main legislative bodies: the European Commission, the Council of the EU, and the European Parliament. Together, they're responsible for creating laws across the EU and for coordinating those laws being implemented in each member nation. The national government appoints a commissioner to the Commission and appoints members to the Council. However, there's that tight coordination with Riksdagen I mentioned before, and it's especially strong on EU-related issues. Finally, members of the EU Parliament are voted for by the people. For this layer, you have to be a citizen of an EU nation if you want to vote. If you're living in an EU nation that's not your home nation, you can either vote in the country you're living in or the country you're a citizen of, but not both. And there you have it. Sweden has 4 layers of government, each with at least one directly elected component. There are several parts of this diagram that I'd like to dig deeper into for the future videos, like how exactly Riksdag members get allocated, or how the EU works, or some of the rights guaranteed in the Constitution. But for now, I hope this gives you a good baseline understanding of the government here in Sweden. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below and I'll see if I can help. Hej då!